Welcome, everybody. My name is Josiah Gaiter. I'm the Deputy Director of Programs here at FreedomWorks. We wanted to take today's interview and walk you through some of what's happening in Florida with the Parental Bill of Rights. So we've brought in Representative Joe Harding, who is actually the sponsor on the House side for this bill, to walk us through not only the bill, but everything around it that's been happening. So welcome, Representative Harding.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, first, can we start, for those who may have varying levels of understanding about the bill, can you very briefly talk us through the reasoning behind the bill and some of the key parts of the bill? Why did you guys decide this is a year, here's the bill, and here's a little bit of what's in it?
Well, again, thanks for having me on. And it's pretty simple. Coming out of the era of COVID, parents were waking up to what was going on in our schools. You had your children coming home for weeks and months at a time doing homework at school. And, parents were really kind of hearing, what are kids learning in school? What is the process? How long does it take for them each day to do their assignments? And parents were really being forced to be very engaged, which I think is a really good thing, because I think more parent engagement is a good thing for our education system as a whole. And so this is what happened. It kind of escalated parents being engaged. And in the process of doing that, parents began to see, there was a handful of things that I took away as a parent who had kids that came home and to do their school at home, as well as other parents that I talked to. Number one was an overall time. What is the time spent in 7 hours, 6 hours at school? What are they doing? Because our assignments, we're getting them done in a matter of a few hours. And so what's the rest of the time filled with? So one was a time question. And then part of it was, when you started to understand what was in our curriculum, it was shocking for some parents to see an agenda that's been going on for years of indoctrinating our kids with, I would say, far left ideologies. And our bill really was a testament of kind of a national movement that we're seeing, where parents are starting to really wake up and fight back and say, it's our role to be the parent, not the school districts. My kids are not wards of the state. You've seen this at school board, meetings all over the country. Florida's been no exception, where parents are showing up and they're frustrated with the lack of transparency in the books that are in their schools, and their kids' schools, to what's in their textbooks. And so our bill, specifically what it was going after, was this far left gender theory agenda that's been pushed into our schools. And there's a case here in Florida where a parent was blocked out, didn't know of a meeting that their 12-year-old child was having, that the school district was initiating with their 12-year-old child to help her change her gender and ultimately try to transition her into becoming a boy and helping her change her name. And that was a major wake-up call. But they were not alone. That wasn't a one-off case. We found out that there were multiple counties that had gender transition guides that on the form that they call a support form, that the parents are barely even acknowledged. Simply their name is written on there. There's no signature of the parent that they're aware of this meeting happening. And that simply, that is the parent supportive or not. And that is not determined by a professional. That was not being determined by necessarily a professional at the school. That could just be in the words of a child saying, I don't think my mom or dad, I don't want them to know. And what kid doesn't want their dad or mom to know about their grades, right? Like, if my kids are getting bad grades, they don't want me to know. I mean, so it was really just shocking to see that form. I started to find out that form existed in multiple schools. So that was a piece of the bill. And I think that's probably part of the bill that gets probably the least coverage. We talk a lot about the K-3 and gender theory and sexual orientation being taught to kindergartners. And that it's still happening in our schools, and our bill is going to end that. But the other part of it is this idea that there were support guides that, whether it was relating to gender, whether it was relating to grades, whether it's relating to honor roll classes, don't make critical decisions for my kids without allowing me as the parent to be the ultimate decision maker on their upbringing. And that's such an important piece of the bill that we address.
Yeah, absolutely. It's called the Parental Bill of Rights for a reason. And what people miss is they get caught up on that K through 12 gender ideology versus making sure that parents are informed and cannot be looped out. Because we're not talking about 18-year-old consenting adults or 30-year-old consenting adults who have developed fully and are capable of making those decisions. We're talking about your kids. It's interesting you say that. I saw a video just earlier today of President Biden telling teachers, while they're in the classroom, they're your kids. And I understand the sentiment that teachers have a huge burden to teach a topic really well, but they're not their students. They're the teacher's students, not their kids. They're your kids, but the teacher's student. And it's a slippery path that's been shrouded in it takes a village.
I think what he is saying really gives words to something that I heard from teachers. I had a lot of teachers that supported this bill and spoke to me, whether it was privately or in different ways that they reached out, because frankly, they are frustrated with this idea. It's coming from the left. It's coming from people like Joe Biden who do believe it's the teacher's job to be the parent. Yep. Teachers don't want to be the parent. It's not their job. Their job is to be the teacher, help these students learn how to read and write and excel at life. And there's a time where they need to be more than that, be a mentor, be a friend. I mean, all those are roles. That's what makes our teachers so valuable. But it's people like Biden who are putting this burden on our teachers to be something that they're not. And it's really unfair to our teachers. Our teachers, you don't sign up to become a teacher because you want to be a parent. You sign up to become a teacher because you want to make a difference in kids' life. And this idea that our kids are wards of the state and the teachers have to raise them. I don't blame our teachers. I blame the bureaucrats, people like Joe Biden who've been in DC for 40 years, and they are the problem. It's not that they're a part of the problem, they are the problem.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the significance around this bill. As you pointed out, during COVID, we saw this uprise and exposure that was generally centered a little bit around critical race theory. That has gone up and down and up and down. And it seems like with this bill, we saw a resurgence and a centering of this gender ideology, similar to that initial spike. I mean, everybody is talking about this. And the polling shows that the language that you had, almost everyone agrees. What side of the aisle that we shouldn't be teaching young children about gender ideology and sexuality. What are the next steps to either do this in multiple states? What is the next step for us to make sure that we can continue this forward?
Well, it's honoring to see other states move forward with similar legislation to ours and use ours as a model. I think that's great. And it really, all it means to me is that Florida continues to lead on issues like this. When Florida gets issues right when it comes to parental rights, or it becomes to abortion rights, or whatever conservative issue it is when it comes to school choice, when Florida leads, the rest of the country will follow. And we're a battleground state. And if we can do it, we can do it right and do it well, other states will follow. But my focus in Florida moving forward is really to take the energy that we have seen from parents behind our bill who say that, there are some topics that are not appropriate for my kids. I don't want the school teaching my kids about their orientation and their sexuality and sexualizing our little kids. You're not going to find a parent outside of a handful of really far woke leftists who believe that it's a school district's job to sexualize our kids. And so my main objective moving forward is to take the energy that we have from our parents and really take this to the ultimate level when it comes to parental rights, which is that empower school choice. I mean, all of this is coming from an issue where our teacher unions and our school board associations have had way too much power within our school districts. They've gotten away from this idea that our education system is about our students and our parents. They've made it about their political views and ideologies, and the kids are just the experiment. They're their science experiment. And I fundamentally reject that. And so what I want to do is continue to take my energy and platform to focus on school choice opportunities in Florida and make Florida, as it has been, continue to be the most aggressive school choice state in the country. Ultimately, we need to go to a full voucher system to where our taxpayer dollars that we are paying in. I think it was probably one of the most interesting things I got from trolls. They would tell me, if parents have an issue of gender theory being taught in classrooms and they should just homeschool their children, well, then they don't need to pay taxes anymore because our taxes are paying for our school systems. So our taxpayer dollars need to be going to funding students not systems. They need to be going into the classroom and not funding bureaucracies. And if you take, and I challenge the viewers of this to do some really simple math, find out whatever county they live in, regardless of the state, find out what their overall budget is for education for their public school system. In my county, it's $700 million. Divide that by the number of students. In my county, that's 40,000 students. You're going to find that we're spending in my county, $17,000 per student a year. That is absurd and ridiculous. And I think that is everything that's wrong with it. Those dollars are going to fund a bureaucracy. They need to be funding our classrooms and funding our kids. And so the ultimate answer to school choice, or ultimate answer for parental rights, is complete empowerment of parents and school choice, and allowing parents to send their kids to the school of their choice that meets their criteria, fits their values, and not be forced to go to a public school that doesn't align with their values.
Well, we couldn't agree with you more. And I think the important element there is that if you pass fully empowering school choice, parents, it allows them to act on their own without having to say, hey, Representative Harding, we need you to pass this bill because this is going on. Instead, it gives them more power so they don't have to rely on as many outside sources to do good for their kids. And imagine, the advocates on the opposite side will say something like, well, Representative Harding, what about the single mom who has to work just to put the kids into school and pay the mortgage? And then you imagine, well, if they have two kids, what do you think $17,000 a year per kid would allow that person to do?
It'd be life-changing. It'd be life-changing.
Absolutely life-changing. So the last question I want to pose to you, and I think you already said one of the things just there, is how do we make sure that as the conservative and the center right, we are the party that says, here's what we want for families, here's what we want in education, instead of saying, here's what we want to get rid of. Obviously, we have to do both. And you mentioned school choice, and that's a huge one. How do we make sure that we continue to message in a way of here's what we want instead of here's what we want to stop? Because we don't want to rely on the far left to continue to shoot themselves in the foot.
So good. So right. I think we take the momentum that we've had just from our bill alone, where you had Democrats doubling down and their idea that they wanted to sexualize little children with gender theory, but yet their polling of their own base shows that they're not aligned with their own base, but they're bought and sold by these teacher unions and these associations that own them, and they have to continue to say that. So the way that we, instead of reacting, that we continue to advance, number one, is we hold those Democrats accountable at any level of government. And the idea that you don't want to empower parents, every one of those folks or Republicans should be held accountable by the voters, number one, so that you, in the future, moving forward, that elected officials realize that the most powerful voice in all of politics is parents, not far left radical groups, it's parents. So number one is hold those accountable that we're on the wrong side of these kind of issues. I think the number two is that continue to advance what we are for. Polling has shown overwhelmingly that voters, regardless of the state, support school choice. But yet we still see a resistance. Florida, we've been very fortunate. I know in other states, they've not had the momentum that we've had on school choice. And so we've got to continue to find candidates that are 100% for school choice options for parents, empowering parents to spend our taxpayer dollars to educate their child in the best way they see fit. That is the second piece. Hold those accountable that were on the wrong side, so that in the future, moving forward, folks realize that, listen, parents are not going to just sit by and watch it happen. We're going to fight back. Number two is advance, what we are for. Look for and vet candidates that support school choice and support parent empowerment. And You do those two things well, we start to create a culture, which I believe we have begun in Florida. You start to create a culture that it becomes, I've said this before, I don't care if you vote on the right side of parents, however we got you there, whether you were bullied there by parents in your district or because it's truly what you believe in your heart of hearts, as long as you vote with the right side of parents, I'll take it. And I think that's why parents need to be more vocal. I think we create a culture of elected officials who believe in empowering parents. And when we do that, and as we do that, we will not be playing reactionary. We will be moving forward in a very strong way that I think is going to be tough to beat.
Absolutely. So empower parents across the board and embrace school choice. It's so refreshing to see younger legislators who have kids in school like yourself supporting school choice. Lastly, Representative Harding, where can people find your work and follow what you're doing in Florida?
Yeah, great. So you can go to my website, joeharding.net. We've done some updates to it, try to keep it in line and updated with what we worked on this year. So first is my website, joeharding.net. Second is I'm very active on Twitter at Joseph B. Harding on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter, and then also on Facebook. We're on there as Joe Harding for state representative. That's our Facebook page. You'll find us there. All of those platforms. And I would encourage people to reach out. We had last month we had over 3,700 donors from across the country. It's really kind of unheard of to happen, but because of the momentum that we had on parental rights, parents were fired up to see someone fighting for them. And it's humbling and honoring. And what I pledge to do to those folks that supported and cheered us on and helped us is to continue to double down, because whether you live in Florida or not, if Florida gets these issues right, the rest of the country will follow. And that's what we are going to strive to do every day, is to continue to lead on parental empowerment.
Awesome. Well, please be sure to check out Representative Harding at all of those places on Twitter and his website. And you can find FreedomWorks on Twitter, on Facebook, and you can learn more about our parent empowerment efforts at parentsknowbest.com. And we hope to see you all there. Thanks, Representative Harding.
Thank you.